listening to Padang Bola Sepak podcast. I apologize for not having a show last week. Very busy, Malaysian family. You have things that you have to do left, right, center. So I'd like to apologize to Omar and Nick for not doing last week's episode. We'll do it again in the future, hopefully within the month or two, and we're gonna renew it in the near future lah. Okay, today we're gonna talk about what topics we're gonna talk about, guys?
Football fan welfare.
Football fan welfare.
Tottenham Hotspur, I assume. That's why I'm.
So the calling cup.
Yeah, no, not that. Yeah, I think football welfare and the Malaysian fan experience.
And Malaysian football fans in general.
Probably.
So today I was supposed to have 3 guests. The third one is very busy, so he told me that he will come for a later episode and all. It's because right now a lot of things are happening, so it's understandable. So for me, if you're listening, come on the show in the future. I giving you a 1 month heads up, by the way. But it's okay lah. Malaysian timing, Malaysian planning, it's fine.
It's all good.
That's good. Alright, today my guest, Ganesh Mahindran. Ganesh?
Yes, Ganesh Mahindran. Twitter username is at I am Ganesh Nadan. And on my left is...
Are you sure?
Not sure that the directions work on a podcast. It's Matt Bellotti. Twitter handle is at MC Matt Sally, 2 T's and 2 L's.
2 T's and 2 L's.
So, thank you very much for having us on.
Yeah,
It's great.
thank
It's
you.
really great to be here.
Great to be
well
here.
done on a
Great
great
to be
podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming. This is the 3rd episode. Well, it should be the 4th, but it's the 3rd. We're going to have 5 episodes overall.
Yes, definitely.
Then we're going to renew it even more. And Matt had a lovely suggestion for a future episode. I'm going to get Alfred and Matt on the same show. On the same show, we're going to talk about derby matches. Maybe like Selangor and KLFA.
Okay.
And also external from the outside the country as well. We're just going to talk about
derbies.
Is the rivalry in Malaysia still there in Malaysian teams? Is it still there? Used to be Kelantan and JDT.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of died down.
It's still a big game though, isn't it? Has it come back in recent years as
No,
JDT have now...
What happened to
on the rise?
Kelantan last 2 years? They kind of fought it. So yeah, there you go. And then we have the East Coast derby, which is not so. But JDT and Pahang is still considered a big.
Yeah, Pahang is coming up
game,
as well.
Yeah. All right. So the first part of the show we're gonna talk about football fan welfare and our Malaysian football experience.
Yep.
So guys, football fan welfare in Malaysia. What are your thoughts? You were at the game with me.
Yes, it was at the game.
With the Suzuki Cup final, Malaysia versus Thailand.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great game actually, I mean, people were at the stadium like 5 p.m. onwards. When I got in there, it was around 7:45, and it was insane. Like, the queue to getting tickets was just insane. It was just, there was no proper lines, there was no proper systems. You had, parents carrying kids on their shoulders. It was mayhem. People were being, rejected outside ticket gates for having fake tickets, and there were no proper stewards there actually looking out for some of the fans. I mean, it could have been mayhem outside, and there's nothing that, I don't think security could have done much about it. So, in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of nice and quaint in a way that everyone's so excited, and I've certainly not known a country, come from the UK watching football, you don't usually see fans arrive at the stadium at 9 o'clock in the morning for a game that's taking place in the late afternoon or evening. I remember a few years ago driving around central KL 9 in the morning on the day of the cup final, and going past me on the road were a convoy of about 6 different Kelantan cars with Kelantan flags and banners and scarves and things flying out the window, which was great. And that side of things I think is excellent, and it's really great that the fans will come and soak up the atmosphere nice and early. The flip side is actually quite serious, which is that there doesn't seem to be enough quality organisation. The safety of fans is a major issue, because if people are going to a game of football with tickets, valid tickets, unable to get into the ground, and when they do get into the ground, there are far more people in there
than there are seats.
Yeah, than there are seats, or the stadium has supposedly, I guess it has a security certificate, a safety certificate to allow people in. That's only going to end one way, and it's in a really serious tragedy. And I've seen in the UK how bad management, not just from stadia but from police, has it's cost lives, and it can't come to that. Malaysia has to, somebody somewhere has to take it seriously enough in Malaysia to address that before it becomes an issue. So before something terrible happens, whether it is a combination of the stadium, the leagues, the clubs, the police, or indeed the stewarding. I don't really know very much about the stewarding culture, but that seems to have worked in Europe, particularly in the UK and other places. But it's very difficult because it is a culture, and it's very hard to expect people to go and watch a football match as a steward, because the sort of person that wants to be a steward and stand at a football match and kind of be in with the fans
would naturally be a football fan.
If you got it in one, they would naturally be a football fan themselves. So it's actually very hard to just say, well, do we have stewards? So I don't know what it's really like in the grounds here. Are there stewards in Malaysia? Is there a body of people that can help look out for their fellow fans?
Well, it's a big no.
Big no.
Big no.
You know, because it's either the event management who's handling the event, or Railer,
yep,
or some of the reserve of the police.
Yep.
That's just about it.
Well, my experience from the UK again, and I think it's probably the experience of most people in most countries, and singling out Malaysia at all, is it's not great to have police in those kind of environments. They're generally quite heated. They're quite
aggressive.
Aggressive, let's say enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic, okay.
Sometimes those sort of places aren't the right place for police to go into, and you don't want to see the heavy-handed policing that was happening in the UK. And in some ways it was needed in the UK, because actually the UK, where I grew up and first started watching football matches, this would have been in the 80s, was a place where fans would be behind the goal one end, and before the match, the hundreds and hundreds of fans would, and this is of course terracing, would run onto the pitch, run across the ground, go into the other opposition end fans, and then do what they would call taking an end. So i.e. driving out the fans that were currently in that end, as the police showing up for the security for us now.
Yep.
So just all coming to defend themselves. I think that's fair enough. But I mean that's where they're at, and of course, yes, that does need something in its way. That's why the fences first came in the UK, to try and hold the fans back. And of course, the fences, we all know from the Hillsborough disaster, were not a good thing for English football. And of course, the Taylor report that subsequently brought in all-seater stadia, very much putting the fans first. If there's one thing that the Taylor report, maligned though it might be, did, which you can only respect it, is putting the fans first. And I think my dearest wish, as somebody that's only watched a little bit of Malaysian football live, but an increasing amount on television and follows the game avidly as a resident here now, is that I do wish that all the authorities would take the fan welfare more seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the simple fact is, football is just a game. It's, you know, and we all get excited about it, and we all support our teams and get very passionately behind them, and we are sometimes aggressive and tribal about whether we win or lose and things. But it's just a game. It's there to entertain and something we should enjoy. And again, growing up in the UK, I've seen fans go to matches and not come home. You know, we've seen that. I remember the day very well in '89 when I heard the news of what had happened at Hillsborough.
Yeah.
And as somebody who used to go and watch football a lot, and still goes to watch football a lot, we've all been there. Imagine you go out to football, when you leave home and you say goodbye to your loved ones.
You don't come back.
Last time you ever talked to them, it can't happen. It simply can't happen. It's 2015, and I think that wherever you are in the world, you can't treat a situation like it's 1985. I think you need to be realistic about take seriously the commitments you have as a to the fans that are paying their money and choosing to come and support their teams. Create the best possible experience for them. And my experience with Malaysian football is that experience is almost second to none. I love it. We go in and the games that I've seen, you see the fans with their drums and singing and the movement. It is a phenomenal country to watch football in, and the thought that somehow that is a threat because stadium capacity isn't respected, policing isn't handled right, fans feel that they have to climb up fences or squeeze through turnstiles.
It's ridiculous.
Or can't get in.
Just to get a view of the game.
It's something that we just can't let happen, and it's very difficult to know how to address that as a supporter.
Yeah.
That's That's my mini tirade, I guess.
But honestly, I mean,
it's good that we're letting this out. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that, I mean, the solutions are not really, it's not rocket science, you know. I mean, we do know the solutions. It's whether we have the willpower to actually want to follow through.
Implementation as well.
And when you're talking about atmosphere, you're spot on, because I went to the World Cup and I went to Bukit Jalil for the Suzuki Cup final. We were outside the stadium and we can hear, I mean, we had goosebumps. Literally had goosebumps.
Your cousin.
Ashwin, yeah, my cousin, he plays football in Queensland. Like, he's gone for big games there. And he was like, this is a whole new level. And it's incredible.
It is. I've done about 4 or 5 FA Cup finals at Wembley, and I've done 1 FA Cup final here, and the atmosphere was something else. It was here. The atmosphere was far and away the most special. But having said that, I did have a slight benefit in that I arrived and then was kind of squeezed into this aisle on one of the top tiers. Because I'm 6'6", I could actually see some of the pitch, whereas there was at least 8 rows of people in front of me that had nothing but a view of people's armpits and the back of their heads. I think, which is a bit of a shame. But so that, I mean, from that point of view, it wasn't a great experience.
Yeah.
But on an atmosphere level, it is incredible. It's kind of sight to behold.
Yeah, like, it's a shame. You know, it's a shame that it's not really taken seriously by the FAM or whoever is in charge with match management.
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask the question: who's holding them to account for that? Is it the stadium? Should they be being held to account? Is it the relevant football authorities and associations regionally? I don't know the answer to this, but someone somewhere has to be held accountable for it.
I mean, the match. I would put the FAM. You know, the match organizer. Yeah, I mean, simple as that. I mean, you guys are collecting gate receipts. You guys are gaining the revenues from it. So obviously, you guys should be managing it right. And a simple solution would be, why have free seating when you can have seat numbering, or I mean, it's a simple thing. So you know for a fact that these are my seats, and I'm gonna get a seat. It's.
And there would be huge fines if there were more people in the stadium than there are seats to give away.
Yeah.
I think
it makes it harder to replicate, to forge tickets when it has proper numbering, when it has proper. You know.
And you don't lose anything from the atmosphere.
You don't.
Really, you know, you can create, especially say at somewhere like Bukit Jalil, you can certainly create great fan activations outside the way they do the new Wembley Way in Wembley Park in London. That's still a really special day, even if you don't make it into the stadium. It can be done. And you're not telling me that people would miss out, because at the moment they're sat around the outsides of the stadium, or they're in the aisle and the gangway, same as I was, kind of not being able to see too much of the game. So if those people aren't in the stadium, they've not really missed out on much.
Because they just want, they like, how many ringgit is it to go watch a Malaysian football game during the final? $50.
$50.
You know, you're paying 50 ringgit to watch a game, to feel the atmosphere, to soak it in.
Yeah.
And it's in that at the back of your mind. So like you're worrying, you're somewhat worried for your life in a bit, because if you're sitting somewhere which is quite vibrating.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you've got twice the number of, it's just simple size. If you've got twice the number of people, you should, i.e. twice the number of weight on a thing. It's not, and then suddenly anything can happen.
Yeah.
So especially when there are flares
Exactly.
and there's fireworks going off, or something exciting happens. Last minute penalty or last
everyone
minute goal.
starts jumping on one side.
This was the issue with terracing. I used to stand on the terraces at Brighton and Hove Albion when I used to watch them, and you'd kind of find the big iron bars that you'd stand behind, but you always had to guess when a goal was coming, because there'd be the surge of the crowd behind you, and you would get completely winded by this strength of 100 people pushing you in the back, because they all. I mean, you've seen the goals when they all stood up in the old footage. That there would be a surge forward towards the goal, so you'd have to guess it, cheer, but at the same time duck down 3 foot and then run through the hole in the line, so you didn't get squashed and winded or have your ribs broken. So it's one of the sort of odd culture things which I guess we don't really have here. But look, I think that. I really like safe standing, and it's something I think will come into the UK in the years to come. And maybe that's something which here would go down very well. The stadia in Germany that have safe standing have done extremely well, very well reacted to by the fans. And again, you look at a lot of the.
That's usually for the singing section, right? It's usually
proper singing section.
Proper singing section,
Yeah, it's great. And clubs like some of the fans in Germany are mad.
Exactly.
Look at the big walls of stadia
It's
they've
amazing.
got there, and the St. Pauli fans and stuff.
Yeah.
Great atmosphere. So it's not impossible. You know, you can be. It's one of the safest places to go and watch football is in Germany.
Definitely.
But they do have standing there, and they do have. Well, so I mean, again, it's not going to happen overnight. But there are lessons that I think any country can take from that.
Yeah.
There was one incident. Was the FA Cup semi-final game, if I'm not mistaken. Pahang versus JDT. It was at Stadium Darul Makmur in Pahang. And the fans overflow to the track, and they had to cancel the game, postpone it to a later game in Bukit Jalil. I think that was 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Again, I mean, you come back to the days of the fencing in the UK, and you can see why tragedies like that occurred, because that is going to happen if you have too many fans or they're not policed well. There's actually the case. The court case in the UK is going on at the moment about the Hillsborough disaster, and again, it's very upsetting listening to it. But you can picture what that day was like and the decisions that were taken by the police, which may have proved fatal. But on the day, they were squeezing people in, and they were sending them down tiny little gangways.
Ridiculous.
It was awful. But you do sort of see that to them they didn't care about fans. They just thought they were scum, and why not cram them in? They're no good. They've been drinking in the pub for 3 hours or something. They sing nasty songs. They're the working class. So why do we care about
if
them?
it was stewards instead of the police, it would have been much different.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that should be up to each individual club to help that stewarding culture.
And they would say, we don't have any money.
Absolutely.
I think they're doing that now, right? They have welfare officers in the UK.
Yes, clubs
do.
Clubs do. I mean, even then, you do get heavy-handed stewards. I think most clubs, if you sit in a consistent place, the fans will have a steward near them that they think is a right piece of work, who they don't like very much. But better that, to be honest, better that, because at least it's a bit of banter, it's a bit of fun, as opposed to actually there was a bit of aggression. And I think the police that show up at English football these days, there isn't the confrontation. It used to be really confrontational, very adversarial, and that was tough. But they've got past that through many years of investments. When you say that no money, you're right. Clubs may not have the money for that. It would be wonderful to think that there are corporate sponsors that could do it. And what a great piece of social responsibility. If you want to invest in football, don't. I don't want to name the brands, but there are crisp companies giving money to Manchester United. Malaysian.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what are you doing? They're Manchester United. They don't need any more money. Can we give it to stewards investing? So that imagine every steward wore a branded luminous jacket, or every steward was, and then it was an investment made into a training campaign, incentives for them to just get paid a little amount. When I was at university, friends and I, well, mainly as a friend of mine actually, I was in Nottingham, and he used to alternate weekends to steward between Notts County and Nottingham Forest. Great thing to do.
Did he get paid, or what was it?
A tiny amount.
Yeah,
but it was at least it was a gesture to say you've given up your Saturday afternoon.
Exactly.
And he would watch the game, and I helped out twice. But it was. I think it's one of those things that it would be nice, but it is a cultural change, and that's not going to happen overnight. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen without serious investment and a change of mindset from some very, very important people, and clubs, authorities, associations, everything. I think one of the things I don't want to make it sound like I know all the answers. I absolutely don't. I don't know a huge amount about Malaysian football, but one thing that strikes me as strange as an outsider is how most of the clubs seem to be football associations.
Yep.
So you have a kind of the KLFA and the Pahang FA and Selangor FA and so forth. And I don't think that helps, because my understanding of that situation is that each individual club, therefore, are working to their own kind of set of guidelines and their own set of authorities. Now, in the UK, the one thing that the Premier League does do is take complete responsibility for this. So each football club has to sign up to a set of expectations and mandates, and I know that the FAM have been proposed to.
I think they do have that, do they?
To do that, they'll have a kind of an umbrella,
statute,
but I think a proper statute that they all sign up to as part of being in the major league is I don't know, but it would surprise me, given that they're each individual football associations as opposed to football clubs, i.e. private enterprises. If they were private enterprises, they'd be more commercially minded, and they'd maybe be more likely to seek out some of the support from the private sector. Whether it be
and have better corporate governance practices
or anyone else, really. I think that for me seems to be the right step in the right
Because
direction.
right now they don't answer to anyone. I mean,
And to change, we are asking turkeys to vote for Christmas because they're obviously going to not just give up their statuses without a fine. But there you go. So that's part of the reason it's such a challenging issue.
It's a long, dragged out war. That's how I put it. Yeah, so that's about the Malaysian football fan welfare, and then it's just the things I've seen going to like international Malaysian games, club games. You know, it's just so appalling. You know, like I think that was the last time. I think it was when Felda was Felda United was hosting games in Stadium MPPJ, the one in Kelantan Jaya.
Yeah.
If I'm mistaken. I went for 2 games, JDT versus Felda and JDT versus Felda and Kelantan versus Felda. It was okay, it was alright, you know. But just imagine if there was more people, you know, and the seats were just concrete. You're paying for the X amount of ringgit.
Yeah, that's the same in Paroy as well, in Negeri Sembilan. Yeah, the upper section is just concrete.
Just concrete.
It just.
So is that sitting or standing?
You can stand, you can sit. At that time, it wasn't full capacity, so it was pretty nice. It was really windy at the top, but if it were full capacity, it would not be. I don't know how it would pass any safety standard.
There you go.
So.
No, they just the reason. One of my friends has a theory. The reason they make it so like wide, so that when you were sitting, you can throw your sunflower seeds down the ground, and it's just easily collection for the next day handy guys to take over. So that's just one of the theories. Look, back to the issue itself. There's enforcement is needed, and before enforcement can be implemented, you need to change the mindset, and that's a long way to go.
You're absolutely right. Let's not just point fingers at authority. There's a change the mindset of fans themselves. Fans shouldn't. It doesn't matter how big the game is. If you go to a stadium and you see people going in and they've got a fake ticket or you're trying to climb up, it's walk away. Nothing is more important. As I say, no one should ever go to a football game and not come home. And the fans themselves can take responsibility. And if they start talking with their feet and saying, "Okay, we're not going to watch football like this anymore," you know, I think most people would rather pay an extra ringgit and go to somewhere where there is a safe
zone.
Sit somewhere safe where they know they can get in. They're not going to get pushed around. Maybe it's stewarded instead of policed because they're going to be looked after a bit more. Maybe that's something
like the ultra section, and you got the family section, and you got the guys who just walk in for the day.
See, the problem here is like from their perspective, from FAM's perspective, people want to buy tickets. If you don't want to go because you're not comfortable with, you know.
Another person will buy it.
Another person is going to buy it, and that's a really irresponsible way of thinking. But that's the problem because their main focus is revenues, I think.
It's just that I don't want to think about it too much that a tragedy would happen.
That's usually the case in Malaysia. You wait for a tragedy to happen before
I'll be absolutely honest. It is completely inevitable in the current set of circumstances, and there's no unless it's addressed. And from the games that I've been to see and the games that I've watched on television, it is inevitable. And I've seen what has happened in the UK, where the worst has happened. I see it here, and it's heartbreaking because there's not much we can do to stop it, and it does need to be everybody together, being open and talking about it.
It's a disaster waiting to happen.
There's nothing us fans can do except for like
raising awareness.
Say it's not good enough. Turn it into something positive. Having said that, and it's obviously not a very positive outlook. I will say you mentioned the ultras there, and actually my experience of the ultras as well is that is really safe. You know, actually they look out for each other.
They're organised. They're structured.
It's incredible. There's very few other sporting experiences in the world.
Beautiful.
Even football that the Malaysian ultras give, and for me, I heard the word ultras first of all, and I had more of a. Rome came to mind, and the nasty ultras of Roma and Lazio.
I was apprehensive as well.
They kind of take knives to people. It's horrible. I mean, the ultras, in the old school ultras in Italy, the fans are genuinely nasty bits of work. Most of them were passionate fans and stuff. But we've been, Manchester United fans have been stabbed, Leeds United fans have been killed, Tottenham fans have been attacked. And all the recent history. This is this century. But the Malaysian ultras. That isn't the experience at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm not right, but my understanding with Malaysian ultras is that actually 99.9% of it is so nicely natured, and they're really friendly
It's
people.
pure
at heart.
football fans.
And it's that's the key thing, is they are football fans. They're there because they love football, absolutely love football, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's a game, you love it. You shouldn't ever get into a situation where it really doesn't matter that much. So if you're not going to go and enjoy yourself, don't go.
Yeah, spot on.
So any last word for the first part of the show? Actually, the first topic is overlapping the first part of the show, but we can continue the second part of the show with the Malaysian football experience that we're going to talk about, and the Malaysian fans, which is okay. Because this is an issue that we should give a lot of dedication and time to talk about.
Nothing more important than fans.
Fans and safety.
Yep.
Safety.
And safety. So any last words before we go take a short break?
I've probably spoken enough.
We're good for now.
No?
Yeah,
We're good for now?
Yeah.
Alright, before we go off, I would like to say, if there's anyone out there who wants to sponsor Padang Bola Sepak podcast, you're free to do so. Just give me a Twitter, just let me know on Twitter, on Facebook or whatever, and then just talk to us. And also, whoever out there wants to do a Malaysian football podcast or just a football podcast in general, let me know. I have the facilities, the software, the hardware to accommodate you, but we'll negotiate. We'll negotiate something right there. You know, yeah. So we'll be right back, and we're gonna talk about Malaysian football our individual fan experience of going to the games, and we're gonna talk about the Malaysian fans in general. And after that, we're gonna talk about Twitter questions. Okay. All right. So we'll be right back after this. And we are back to Padang Bola Sepak podcast. Yeah, we're gonna go real fast lane about this. The second part of the show, we're going to talk about our Malaysian football fan experience, and later we're going to talk about Malaysian fans in general. Twitter questions if we have time. If we have time. Alright, or maybe I just answer them through Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah?
We could do that.
Yeah. Each of us just put our profile and just type.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Alright, okay. We're going to talk about our Malaysian football fans experience. So who wants to go first to talk about their first experience? So, Gani? Yeah.
Alright, I'll do it.
Take it from there. I'm going to guess your experience is slightly more mainstream than mine.
Yeah, so my first football game was actually a Sarawak Selangor. This is back in Kuching. I was about 6 years old. And I've got like 2 other siblings, and no one else in the family is interested in football except me. So I started off actually following football on the radio, because back then not all the Sarawak games were shown live on television. So, and the games in Sarawak starts half an hour earlier at 8:15.
Yeah.
So I used to turn on the radio, and it was amazing. It was a whole different experience, to be honest, because you just got to visualize the pitch. And when the commentator shouts goal, it's just a moment of elation. It's insane. And my dad used to think, did I drop my son somewhere? Like, what's wrong with him? and he decided to surprise me, and like, you know what? Let's go watch a football game together. And I can't remember the score, but yeah, Sarawak did emerge victorious, and it was a crazy experience. Like, for me, it was, I got to spend time with my dad, and I met so many other fans there. They were really nice, despite me being a little kid. I remember, everyone was just so accommodating, and there was a great football culture, I felt. And that's how my love for Malaysian football started. And it grew, and I think in 97, Sarawak won our first league, Premier League. In 99, we reached a Malaysia Cup final. We played Brunei. And that was insane because I think it was held in Bukit Jalil. And all the Malaysian fans, it was literally Malaysia versus Brunei. Because you had fans Selangor, from Pahang, and they were all wearing the Sarawak jersey. And, I didn't watch the game live, but I saw it on television. It was an amazing experience. We lost the Malaysia Cup final, I think. But... we could check. Yeah. So, that's how it started for me. I was, followed. That was my first team. And then we moved to Seremban, and then I started following the Negeri Sembilan games. But somehow, after a few years, I gradually lost interest because there was so many things plaguing Malaysian football. There was issues of people talking about players being corrupt. They were talking about there was issues, security issues. My dad felt it was not safe to go to the stadium, and I think that was sort of a downhill for me as a fan. And I sort of stopped going for football games.
It seems to have affected a lot of people. This was slightly before I came to Malaysia. I lived in Malaysia about 9.5 years. but it seems it's almost a lost generation of fans, which in itself is a bit of a tragedy, because of what happened in football. And it's a really important lesson about the integrity of a game, and people believe, if you want to be passionate and believe in something, it has to have integrity. You can't think that the people behind it are all corrupt and things. There's a piece we did in Esquire magazine. People might not realise what I publish magazines as my day job, and we do Esquire magazine, and it was only reading a piece in there a few years back that spoke to some of the individuals concerned that I realised just how hard-hitting this was and how many Malaysian fans shied away from the game as a result. And it's really sad to hear that, because listening to you talk there, Ganesh, your first experience of football was extremely similar to my own. My dad taken me as a young boy, and we'd have my little town where I grew up in South England had a small team. There's still a non-league team to this day, and first of all he'd take me just for 45 minutes because that's all I could realistically put up with. But then it would be eventually I'd get to a game, and then Brighton was our near club, and sometimes we'd watch Brighton. We went to see my grandparents in Norwich, and we went to a big game at Norwich, and the visiting team were Tottenham Hotspur, and Tottenham won that day, and that's why I'm a Spurs fan to this day, is because I saw Tottenham play, and that was a very good team in the early 80s that Tottenham had. But otherwise, that is very, very similar experience in terms of going with your dad, having that special moment where you can see a game, you see these amazing athletes on the pitch playing a game that looks just incredible, and you know you can play it as well. A great beauty of football is, yes, we can all go and watch it in a stadium, but you just get a ball with your mates. You can play in the street.
Exactly.
You can play in anyone can go outside where they're at the moment and have a little knock about the football, and it's fantastic. That's the reason that football is the people's game all over the world. On my side, kind of talk about the Malaysian fan experience. My first game was a bit different, much more recent than that. It was only about 3 or 4 years ago, Shah Alam Stadium, to watch Selangor v Kelantan, which was obviously quite a big game. It wasn't that big a game that night, it was quite early in the season. We actually went along to support Boyan Hodak, who's a sort of friend of ours, an acquaintance from the BFM show, when he was manager of Kelantan. It was a very, very different experience from what I was used to in football, but in quite a positive way, and there's lots of fun moments and highlights that stand out for me. We turned up, and as we discussed in the first half, there's no allocated seating, so we all went, and I say all, there were 3 of us, myself, Stuart Cavens, who's from the BFM show as well, and our producer Andy Wigan. We sat with the Selangor fans to start off with, and that was kind of all right in the first half. That was okay, and then at half time, because we walked down the other end of the ground and we sat with the Kelantan fans in the second half, and to be honest, that was an awful lot more fun because they had drums and they had dancing and they welcomed us with absolute. There was nothing against the Selangor fans. In fact, the Selangor fans were fun in some ways. They stopped us as we were walking inside the stadium and tried to. And, well, they succeeded. They asked to have photographs with us. And I don't know if they just saw me at 6'6" and thought, wow, Peter Crouch has come over, tried to scout some of the players or what it was, but it was quite fun. They obviously thought we were there on some kind of scouting mission from a top European club. Didn't realise that we were just kind of drunken expats that were stumbled into the stadium and watched a bit of a game. But so we did that, but it was fun. And the Kelantan fans that night were absolutely sensational, and I very quickly came to learn that, and it isn't only Kelantan, but Kelantan fans are just something else. Yeah. The contribution they bring to the stadium is incredible. I mentioned about them arriving at 9 AM on Cup final day a few years ago, and that seems to be the case. And you've got the stadium at home there is an incredible experience. Comes through on the television, you can barely hear what's going on because of the shouting and the screaming and the singing and the drums. Just when you're watching at home on the television, so it's to be there in the stadium is remarkable. So my experience of Malaysian football is extremely positive, and I will sing it from the rooftops to anyone who cares to ask, even back in the UK.
Lovely.
So will you invite your friends or
Absolutely, I'd have no hesitation. I think, as we talked about the first half again, to go back, so the big games I would shy away from, if I'm honest, because I have concerns about the safety. Concerns about the safety, and also you just can't see. You want to go to football and see it, or you may as well sit at home and watch it on television. Soak up the atmosphere, walk around outside or something. But it's not. It doesn't really appeal to me, that type of environment when you're crammed in. It's pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. And so the big games, possibly not. But no, I was happy watching football. But I would say
Any other game.
any league games.
Yeah.
Well up for that
Yeah.
with any of the teams.
Yeah.
Cool. My football experience was because my siblings here, because they all my eldest brother supports Manchester United. So I went and watched Malaysia versus Manchester United back in 1988, 1989.
That doesn't count.
Back then, I'm not even a Man U fan. Put that record straight, I'm a football fan. I'm not gonna, So that was just a lazy experience because they just wanted me to come along. So I have the exact opposite of what you guys had.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was forced into, because my thinking was the game was a Sunday. I thought I could get away with school the next day.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but I didn't get away with it. So that's my first Malaysian football experience. But after seeing Malaysia versus Manchester United again, not live, but I saw on TV, when Amri Yahya scored the 2 goals,
Yeah.
that changed my mind. I was like, something's going on with Malaysian football. So I started paying attention closely. Then start following K. Rajagopal's team, of 2009, on Kim Swee. Then I started being a fan gradually. Then we won the Suzuki Cup in 2010. Then I told myself, okay, I need to watch a Malaysian football game. Then the following year, a team from UK came and watched the game. Lovely, But here's the thing, some of my friends who told me when they watched like the clubs they were supporting and the national team that they're supposed to support, so they're in that conflict. Who do I support? So we'll talk about that on a future episode. So I don't want to.
It's a big subject.
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll talk about that in a future episode. So it got me thinking. So I watched Malaysian football since then. So I supported a certain team, true and true, and then I started live tweeting all these things from my personal Twitter account, and I started Padang Bola Sepak. So that's how it went gradually. And my first ever Malaysian football game, like Malaysia versus a local rival team, was Malaysia versus Indonesia back in 2012. And that was a brilliant game. Malaysia won 2-0.
Yeah.
And it was because that game was a must-win game.
Yeah.
Because the first game against Singapore we lost. The second game we won against Laos 4-1, and we both teams needed to win to advance to the second round. So I was like, okay, let's go. So all 12 of us went and watched the game, and it was so brilliant. We were sitting directly opposite from the Indonesian fans, and when we scored the 2 early goals in 25th and 29th minute, one's at Haikal and Mahali Jasuli, the celebrations were just crazy. And then people just popping up flares and
plus it's like 4 minutes apart. Before you're done celebrating the first goal, the
second goal just came in. We're all singing Inilah Barisan Kita, just singing, and then before you know it, it's another goal. And it was so cool. And Malaysian fans, I would tell you, when we're leading, we can be really cocky. On the 70th minute, I remember every complete pass that we do, we're like, ole, ole, ole. And then when the Indonesian fans about to leave, and then everyone was singing like, bale, go back home. And then it was a really cool experience, and I love that. I love that. And then the following home game that I went was Malaysia v Thailand. Then ever since then, any opportunity I can go watch a Malaysian game, I don't care what level, I'll go. There was one game back in 2013. I was around this time, January, February, around that time. I watched Harimau Muda B versus Harimau Muda C. And I saw one at Haikal right in front of me, Falisha's right in front of me, and they are so different compared watching on TV. I was actually right in front when once Haikal got tackled, got mauled by a Harimau Muda C player right in front of me. So and how they scored the goal. Gary Stephen Robert was there. It was brilliant to see him.
He's a good player.
He's a good player. He's a good player. Omar, if you're listening, I'm advocating Gary Stephen Robert.
He's a key linchpin, especially in the football that I've seen, the Southeast Asian football. That type of player is absolutely essential. The kind of the workhorse that just doesn't stop running, is so strong, but also technically very gifted as well. And I'm sure his time in Europe is going to stand him in extremely good stead.
Yeah, the 3 months.
Yeah,
it's a good timing. And then the other future kid, Adam Nur Azlin, really good.
Nice.
I think right now the plan is for him to move to another position. I'm not sure, But back then he was playing holding midfield with Gary, and it was really like
Solid.
it was solid. They controlled the game, possession and all. And ever since then, I've been going for like friendly games, under 20, the On Kim Sui. For me, I like going for the On Kim Sui games because there's more entertainment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because how he sets his team.
Sets his team, yeah.
It's
Much more
great.
attacking.
Like there's one game, Malaysia versus Malaysia Harimau Muda versus FC Rukyu. At that time, I remember vaguely. Not vaguely. I remember it precisely. K. Ruben start on right back, and we had some ATM fans right in front of me, and they were like, "Pass it to K. Ruben. He knows what to do." Throughout the whole 90, they was like, "Pass it to him." And then every time K. Ruben makes a great pass, we're like, "Oh, fantastic!" And when he makes his assist, they're like, "Whoa, that's the reason why K. Ruben should be playing," and this and that. So K. Ruben, if you're listening, yeah, that happened. Yeah, I was there that night.
It's interesting, just to use a reference to the UK at the moment. You mentioned the youth supporters. Tottenham have got this group called 1882, which is the year Spurs were founded, and they try and go together as a collective to games. They can't usually get seats together as a group for pretty much any Premier League game or any of the first team games, and as a result they've started following the youth team, and so these kids who are 16, 17, 18
Going up the ranks.
will play. Normally they're used to playing in an empty White Hart Lane, or they'll play at Barnet, or they'll play at Dagenham and Red Bull, wherever they might play at these kind of grounds. Suddenly they show up and there are maybe 200 or 300 fans that stand up for the whole game and sing and cheer and chant and get behind them for these kids.
It's fantastic.
And Manchester United have a group, the green and gold United fans.
The green and gold, yeah.
Yes, they've got their FC
Newton
United,
Heath.
but they're also now latching on in the same way to the youth sides. And wouldn't that be brilliant? Wouldn't that be great? Because we all know that the UK and the Barclays Premier League has got the prawn sandwich brigade, the people that they pay a lot of money and they don't want to stand up, they don't want to sing, they don't want to cheer, and that's all right. But actually, football should be an enjoyable fan experience.
Correct.
And I love the idea of going and supporting these young kids, chanting for them, cheering for them.
Yeah.
The Harry Kane rise through the ranks.
All
he
all
did.
these guys, Ben Taleb
Ben-
and Kane, and these fans were watching those players play a couple of years ago. There's another big good wave of them coming through again now. It's a nice thing that fans, and I think what it's done, the fans that are part of this 1882 feel more connected to the club and more connected to these young players. Again, in turn, the players don't feel more connected because they feel that these guys are really looking out for them. And so, I'm completely with you. If you get the opportunity to go and watch games, don't make it the cup final, don't make it the big matches. There's as much enjoyment to be had if you bring it yourself and you're going to go and sing and chant and get behind your youth players. Fantastic, love it.
So back to the story, like seeing all these guys growing up, and seeing them on the telly, and seeing them perform what you would say, because I was typing on my blog, they're saying, "Oh, this plays this and that," and when it comes to fruition, you feel, wow, my estimate was more or less correct. Not to gloat or whatever, but to see these guys really
it means more.
It means more. Yeah, maybe we should do something like that for Malaysia.
Yeah, do you know that would be a great thing to do on the pod, is to pick a player. We'll pick a player a week, do a little brief 3-minute bio on them.
Yeah,
talk about that.
That would be great.
This is one to watch, guys. Keep an eye on this person. Track them over the seasons and see where they go.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll do it when we renew for the new
little fantasy football.
If anyone would like to sponsor that, I'm sure I'd be more than happy to have the deal.
Yeah, we've been 3 episodes in so far. Everyone who's been listening in, we got a lot of good feedback. Okay. Right. Back now to the last topic before time's up. The Malaysian fan in general. What you guys? What's your thoughts? Fantastic.
Yeah, I think we mentioned before. As sort of an outsider's point of view, it is fantastic. Malaysian fans are completely obsessed in the healthiest possible way with the game here. Yes, again, stadiums pack out. There's a key following for that. I hope that the new television deal
Works out.
reinforces that. I don't know how it's going to pan
Yeah.
out. I don't know enough about it. I think it seems slightly harder for me to watch games. I used to like settling down and seem to find games on. So far, I'm not quite doing that. But
Then
maybe,
you turn to the English
maybe I'll find a
commentary.
way. So I would generally try and get the English commentary on there. But I think total immersion in football is just an incredible thing for a Malaysian football fan, and it's very interesting actually being an English football fan, because not just about the English game, but obviously mainly about the English game, that my fellow countrymen can be very parochial and not to say arrogant about supporting certain teams and explaining to them and living why a Malaysian football fan can have every bit the same sense of connection with an English club that an English person can and do. The guys that come down for the Spurs matches at Sid's pub in Bangsa, they're absolutely committed Tottenham fans to the like of any that
My
I've
dad
seen.
is the biggest Tottenham fan as well. He's insane, just cursing the team every second.
That's not exclusive to Tottenham at all.
Yeah.
You know, you've got teams you can walk around KL City Centre, and I've seen Hull City, Sheffield United, Middlesbrough. You know, all these
Everton.
clubs, all these teams, and it's a total passion. Again, at the risk of just kind of making it a promo for me. Last month we wrote in Esquire, and I did a piece with a friend of mine, Claire Kenny Tipton, about Malaysian fans and their connection to English football, why they're so obsessed with it. And it was fascinating. We spoke to loads of people about their background, and there's wonderful stories about a generation of Malaysians that have grown up listening to the wireless late at night, or watching the one game that came on in a week, or maybe the only games that were shown in the season were the FA Cup quarter-final, semi-final and final. So the FA Cup has a special relevance to Malaysia, which it's maybe even losing in the UK. So it's really, for me as an Englishman, it makes me extremely proud of our game. Yeah. But it also makes me proud as someone that lives in Malaysia, that the fans here just have taken it to the heart. And I think maybe that's part of the reason that when you go to stadia here, the experience is so special, because the romance of what football is something that Malaysians completely get, and they completely immerse themselves in. It's brilliant.
Finish?
Yeah. My thoughts, I think this would apply to most of the fans that, probably the slightly older fans. But most of the younger fans that I've realized, they don't really follow Malaysian football. It was in my age group. And they follow the BPL primarily because of the timing, actually. Yeah. Because the games are convenient. You can watch it at 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Latest game maybe 12, unless it's a midweek, then 3:45. But they don't really follow the La Liga or the Serie A because it's games are later in the day, and they don't follow Malaysian football at all. And but I don't know. Can I blame them? Do I understand? Because the Malaysian game has changed quite a bit. And if you're not followed the game back, like for me, the reason I sort of follow it was because I followed it when I was young. So a lot of them probably grew interest in football because now it's commercialized. It's, everyone watches football. Girls are playing futsal. And so naturally, it's, the game has, if you do not know about football, you're missing out on a lot. So a lot of people who naturally would not watch football or do not play football, but they are now watching football. They may not necessarily play, but they still watch. And so for me as a Malaysian fan, I feel that we should actually do a bit more to attract the more urban crowd. I think that's what's lacking in Selangor and KL.
Yeah, especially for KL, I feel.
Look, yeah, absolutely. I think just you hit the nail on the head when you talk about marketing. And the reason Premier League is successful all over the world is this incredible investment and marketing that Sky Sports did when they took over it, and when it was decided by the clubs in the top flight of English football to create this thing called the Premier League. And they haven't looked back, because it is a marketing machine. Is the football the best in the world? No, nowhere near. Are the players the best in the world? Well, yeah, there's a few that are right, but they're not the absolute best. Is it the most exciting? No. Is it the most highest scoring? No, not really. But there are good games, and there's some interesting stories.
I would say exciting, definitely.
Exciting in as much as maybe the teams down the bottom can beat the teams at the top.
Exactly.
That's really all it's got going. Is it? If you're looking for the purity of football, it's probably not up there with the best. But the marketing behind it has absolutely driven this thing. So it's unavoidable, like you say. And I think that maybe to come back to the Malaysian associations needing to come together and create some kind of unified body that can go out and attract big corporate sponsors drive the market and the brand of Malaysian football,
That's
so that it becomes
paramount.
cool to the youngsters.
Yeah.
It becomes cool for people to think, I want to go down and watch my local team
Yeah,
at
exactly.
their stadium all over the country, and we're only just seeing the waves of it maybe becoming cool again in recent years, from my understanding, and I really
That's true.
hope that continues. But it will only continue if it's made attractive enough to the private sector to invest big money
Yeah, exactly.
to get behind the teams, and that's something I think if you're a club here, they really need to go after.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it at that. We're running out of time, but we'll take one Twitter question. Just one.
Okay.
One special Twitter question. Ooh. Okay. The question is, no, it's about the local league. Well, if the issue of Lions 12 probably extending their stay in Malaysian Super League. General thoughts? Subject them to relegation if they're watching.
Yeah, good question. It's difficult to for me to comment on
The league.
well, on the process of it all, and whether the rightness or the wrongness of it. I'll just say that I would be happy if they finish bottom of the league because they're not Malaysian. So I sort of feel that when they won the league the other time, I didn't think that was a good thing for anyone really. But then if they deserve it by merit, having said that, the increasing quality can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
You know, if they're good, if they're competing, and if they're raising the standard of the league, then maybe fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, like football back then, we had Singapore, we had Brunei in the league, and I mean it sort of gave a different dimension to it. But I think it's very subjective. Depends on what the end goal is. If your end goal is creating a stronger league, having better players come through, then I think it's all right. You know,
It's kind of like having Monaco in the French league, you know. They're not even French, but they're still in the
Swansea in the Premier League, maybe.
Yeah,
Cardiff,
exactly, Cardiff, Swansea.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for today's podcast because we leave it at that. Thank you guys for coming to the show. You guys want to pitch in anything? What you guys are doing?
Just to say thank you very much for having us, and what a great podcast. Long may you roll.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, great podcast.
Hopefully we're gonna renew for another 5 episodes. We're gonna a lot of ideas are popping in. We're gonna have Padang Bola Sepak podcast extra, which is gonna be a half-an-hour conversation between one-on-one guys.
Okay, brilliant.
Because I have this one guy who's gonna talk about football branding.
Nice, lovely.
You guys talked about marketing and all. So football branding is one of them. So Naeem, if you're listening, I'm waiting on you, man. So a lot of things are
in the pipeline.
Planning because I think Padang Bola Sepak podcast extra is good to fill in the gaps when I'm not having show, because apart from this I have like 4 other jobs. So I gotta keep rotating this and that. So thank you guys for coming. Twitter handles for one last time, or self-promotion.
Alright, add me at I am Ganesh Nadan, and
you can follow me, and God help you if you do, at MC Matt Sally. That's hopefully after the Chelsea win on the Chelsea game on the weekend, I've got over my little meltdown on Twitter for a while. It's been more bearable for a while.
Yeah, I've seen it. Alright guys,
thank
from
you.
all of us here in an undisclosed location in Bangsar, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.